Breaking news tonight on Narrative. Donald Trump's shocking 90-minute phone call with Vladimir Putin, surrendering America to our greatest foe. That's the story tonight on Narrative. It only took 23 days, but Donald Trump revealed his true colors today by capitulating to Russian President Vladimir Putin, America's longtime adversary. It all happened in a matter of hours. At 11 a.m., Tulsi Gabbard, who is known for her Kremlin ties, was appointed to be the Director of National Intelligence. An hour later, at noon, America executed a baffling prisoner exchange, handing over Alexander Vinnick, who's a key player in Russia's 2016 interference campaign, in return for former teacher Mark Fogel, who was being held by the Russians. Minutes later, Trump and Putin held a 90-minute phone call. It's their first since Trump's second term began. They discussed what they called a peace plan for Ukraine. But notably absent was Ukraine's president and America's ally, Volodymyr Zelensky. Putin and Trump also discussed Middle East peace and artificial intelligence, as if this was just an ordinary summit between two key allies. And it ended with the niceties we normally do reserve for our closest allies. Trump invited Putin to Washington, and Putin invited Trump to Moscow. Forgotten were 8 years of vicious election interference in our democracy. By the time Trump sat down for lunch, the world had been reshaped in Vladimir Putin's image. And not for nothing. Tonight on Narrative will also reveal the stunning amount of money that Donald Trump made from those meme coins he sold just before he took office. That's all coming up tonight on Narrative. Joining me tonight is Olga Lautman, our very special regular guest on all things Ukraine and Russia. She's, of course, the author and editor of the Substack Unmasking Russia. She joins us tonight because this is a huge, big story. There's no underlining how big the story is. It's probably the biggest shift in global relations since World War II.
Everything that happened today was very predictable. I wrote about it and have been advocating for Europe to take the lead because I knew that under Trump, U.S. will betray Ukraine. We saw from the first term, and even for decades prior, that Trump's loyalty lies with Russia. Nothing that happened today was unpredictable. It's infuriating. This is where we are now. The United States, that was the leader of the free world, is now aligning with all the axis of evil, basically. And we've spoken before that under Trump, the U.S. will become part of the axis of evil. And for all of Trump's talk about the golden age for America, the only country he's doing the golden age for is China right now, because they're the ones who are powerful enough to step in and use their power to create stronger alliances across the globe. And of course, he's helping with Russia. And if you look at what happened today, this has been a few weeks in the making. Every single step that Trump has taken over the past few weeks is basically checking off a wish list for Russia. Since the Soviet Union, the FBI has been one of Russia's biggest adversaries, and the CIA. Trump is gutting the CIA and the NSA and every intelligence agency in hopes of leaving America defenseless. USAID was America's biggest soft power that defended democracy, provided humanitarian aid across the world, and Elon putting a sledgehammer to USAID. And again, this was on since the Soviet days. This was their wish was to overthrow this agency. The klepto capture that was created after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, they disbanded it. This capture task force was specifically put together to seize assets of Russian oligarchs and businessmen around the globe. Gone. Foreign interference task force, gone. Bribery task force, a unit to monitor election interference and foreign bribe, gone. And then you have today, basically, Trump attempting to hand Ukraine to Russia. This is basically the past 3 weeks Trump giving every single thing that Russia wants. He's handed it to them on a gold platter.
Indeed, that is exactly what it looks like. Your comments there are so stark when you listen to that list because it is so un-American, all those things. We don't do these kinds of things. We don't side with Russia against Ukraine, or one of our key allies. We don't reverse our decisions on so many important criminal cases like the Vinnick case, which we've got to discuss later on, but also the dismantling of these prized institutions that America has, from the CIA to the FBI, Justice Department to the USAID. These are important organizations that have held the American flag up high over the last 50, 60, 70 years. And now just handing them off to Russia in this way, it's almost waving a flag of surrender, to be honest. It looks like that.
Absolutely. And for people who question why is the U.S. providing this humanitarian aid and medicine, Americans need to realize that these packages are all marks from the American people. These are countries that will fall under Russia's or China's influence, and instead are looking up to the U.S. for helping them and grateful to the American people. And then I forgot to add one more, one of the most important on the checklist, if you would think the others aren't as. And that is threatening to attack NATO allies, the so-called axis of evil, not North Korea. He is threatening to invade Canada, a NATO ally, threatening to invade Greenland, a NATO ally. So you have him on top of it, setting the stage where Europeans have to actually figure out whether they need to send troops to Greenland to prevent an invasion from the United States. Are you kidding me? This is what the Soviets wanted. NATO was created post-World War II to keep communism at bay and prevent it from spreading and protect sovereign territories across Europe. And this is what he is doing. He's picking a fight from day one with our NATO allies. And there's a strategic reason. It's not because he just feels like saying, I want Canada. This is because he's laying the groundwork to leave NATO one way or another. Either officially admitted through congressional approval or to just defund it to a point that the U.S. will become irrelevant.
The U.S. may become irrelevant, or this new powerhouse combination of China, Russia, and America. Now, that is a formidable combination of powers that the rest of the world does not really have the firepower to stand up against. It seems very hard to imagine Europe or Africa or Australia or Canada or any of these other countries left over to put up anything formidable against this powerhouse alliance that is being formed by the alliance between Putin, Xi, and it seems Trump. The fact that we're looking at is that you can deny it, you can pretend it's not happening, but just look at the negotiations over Ukraine with Putin today. Basically, to negotiate with Putin before talking to the Ukrainians about what they want is treasonous in many ways. It just seems wrong in every possible way.
It started earlier before that, where the so-called defense secretary of the United States basically went to Europe to say, one, that Ukraine is not getting its territory back. Two, Ukraine is not going to see NATO. Three, that U.S. had its own, quote, unquote, war on the border, which is complete bullshit. So U.S. will not be participating in European security, defense of European security. And four, that if Europe does send a peacekeeping force, that it cannot be done under the NATO umbrella because it cannot trigger Article 5. So you started with this, and actually you started yesterday because I knew something had taken place yesterday when Trump announced the release of American Mark Fogel, and he kept intertwining it with Ukraine. And I'm like, is Ukraine the one who is being sacrificed for a release of an American? Apparently, because then today you saw American from Belarus, which is Russian puppet, being released. So it started yesterday. First of all, there's absolutely should not be any crossover between the release of an American that Russia took hostage with what is happening to Ukraine, where Russia is invading a sovereign territory with the intention to commit genocide. They clearly have stated it. I can't even tell you how many times. This is all they discuss on Russian TV. Until all Ukrainian biological matter is gone, we will not stop. So those two issues have nothing to do with each other. And then it led to today, the excess basically putting out the U.S. policy for the world to see. This is not Fox News where he's just spewing some propaganda. He was sitting in Europe repeating this Russian propaganda. And not only repeating it, but taking steps to back it, basically saying this is the new U.S. policy. And then then came the call with Putin. And basically the fact that Trump basically continues to see, which I'm not shocked. I mean, I'm shocked that he's not blaming Ukraine for Russia invading Ukraine. But the fact that he continues to say, from a U.S. position, that there's so much death and both countries are participating, and that he discussed with Putin how this war started. Well, it started because Russia crossed borders into a sovereign country. This is how it started. And the American president, the only conversation that should be had is, Russia, you see your borders, pack up your shit and go.
Crimes that they are saying happened in the U.S. government are nothing compared to the crimes that Vladimir Putin has instigated against the Ukrainian people. These are horrific war crimes. And now he's being allowed to essentially walk away as a victor in all of this. And not only that, the thing which I find so interesting about the exchange between Fogel and Vinnick is one of the main instruments of power, really, because he was the one who created the currency backbone for Vladimir Putin to start this war with the West. He through his exchanges and his hacking, Vinnick was the one who was able to create a cryptocurrency pipeline for Putin so he could pay all the people involved in 2016 to get Donald Trump elected. And he was, successfully prosecuted in the United States, a huge criminal. This is a massive multi-million-dollar criminal. And today he was just allowed to head back home to Vladimir Putin's arms, who will use him again, no doubt, to do cryptocurrency hacks and all sorts of manipulation around the world against the United States as well. This is not really a fair exchange.
I frankly am shocked that Elon and Trump didn't give them office space and a high-level position in the crypto whatever agency that they're creating, and buy him from Russia, which maybe you'll have a joint Russian-U.S. crypto.
They might try it. They've tried weirder things before. Speaking of crypto, we've been covering this a lot on Narativ, and there's some really big, interesting news that came out just today about who made the money off those Trump meme coins that came out the day before the election, or a couple of days before the election. It just underlines to me how challenging crypto is overall. This is basically a look at how the Trump coin profited different wallets. And basically, you had 810,000 wallets losing a combined $2 billion in value, and 31 wallets picking up $680 million, which tells you there's obviously a difference there that goes into all sorts of people's pockets. But the fact that only 31 people, basically, or 31 accounts that were early adopters of this Trump meme coin, who were able to buy this Trump meme coin for at 16 cents or at less than that, when it was originally released, they were the ones those are the only ones that reaped the rewards. It's always this same thing with Trump and Musk and Putin. They're all the same players. This is a pump and dump scheme, and we're seeing it before our very eyes. And what did the president of the United States get for this? $100 million just on trades. So you've got a pump and dump scheme that's happening in the public right now, with the president of the United States and Elon Musk and David Sachs and all these insiders are making hundreds of millions of dollars. And I bet you Vladimir Putin is making hundreds of millions of dollars in this pump and dump scheme that's basically happening in front of our very eyes. And there's no coverage. People are not really focusing on this major scandal. If any other president in U.S. history had stolen $101 million in a pump and dump scheme, an illegal one, people would be going crazy. But for some reason, we're in a situation now where crypto, which is really something that Vladimir Putin it's the biggest champion of. He's made so much money of crypto, and he's announced a new mining initiative. This is the thing that is going to become the backbone of the U.S. Treasury. This is the thing that is going to make them even wealthier. This is going to take Trump and Musk and Sachs and Putin over the top in terms of wealth. and leave the rest of Americans floundering or at least holding the bill at the end of it all when it all collapses. This is my personal passion project, but it seems to me unbelievable that this is not getting any coverage and people are just cheering it on.
I absolutely agree. And I understand on X, there's no coverage. But what about the whole damn media? There is legacy media that still exists. And yes, they've written articles about this. I actually have a Trump tyranny tracker to document the erosion of institutions and the power grab. And I think I've already included several stories on these crypto schemes. But this should be a bigger story. And frankly, everything should be a bigger story. And unfortunately, it's being normalized where you now have people even on legacy media sitting and discussing whether there's a separation of powers and should be a separation of powers between the judicial and executive branch. Everything is so upside down right now that it's incredible. Like we all, since the first time we learned U.S. history, that there are these so-called of government. And now you have pundits sitting and saying, why should a judge be able to tell an administration what they can or cannot do? There's so much that is happening and it's so quick. And with Trump, he uses strategic chaos where he floods the zone with shit. So much information, so many executive orders, so many statements that important things like this crypto go uncovered and other important aspects go uncovered while the media is focused on, for instance, other statements that he's made, including Gaza. Look, his so-called plan for Gaza is outrageous, but it's not happening today. This is something that if he chooses to go through with it, he has to prepare the U.S. military. They have to go in and forcibly remove 2 million Palestinians. This is not happening today. He did announce it, however, when the media finally started dealing with what in the hell is Elon Musk and his unvetted criminal, in some cases, teenagers doing with our data. They're literally stealing and copying every American's data, all our classified intelligence, everything about the U.S. government. They are copying, they're recoding so they can go and alter information. They can put stop payments. So, for instance, Trump at one point says, we're not going to pay out Social Security to New Yorkers. They didn't vote for me. They're able to go click and shut off Social Security payments to New York.
Actually, I think what's going to happen is they're going to take this information that they have on X and out of the social platforms, so there's really a ton of data. They're going to start marrying that to the Treasury files and the private information that we have there and the medical files that we have in there. And they'll be able to know every aspect of every American's lives completely.
Even worse, their children. Because any person who files a tax return has to list their children and Social Security numbers.
Yes.
This is exposing the children of American people who then, that could be leaked online and used as a basically weapon to threaten opposition figures. And I'm talking about minor kids, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, not obviously teenagers and whatnot. Anyways, the minute the media started dealing with this, and actually this was finally a breaking news story for them, Trump threw out the Gaza statement. And immediately, what Elon was doing, what's happening in our institutions, basically the sledgehammer of U.S. democracy took a backseat, and breaking news, Trump announced that he's going to take Gaza and send U.S. military in there. And and this is why your crypto story is not getting attention, because this is where it is. There's so much happening at the same time, and people and media tend to focus on more of the shiny objects instead of these serious things where these people are enriching themselves. And not only that, who are these 31 wallets? That could be...
They're Chinese. A lot of them are Chinese.
Saudis, it could be Russians, it could be foreigners buying the U.S. president after Elon bought the White House.
Exactly what's going on. There was a really interesting story, which also has not received very much attention, about US aid and Elon Musk. And it's something that ties back to something I know you're very passionate about, which is the Starlink modems that were made available to Ukraine. US aid was reportedly investigating Elon Musk for the transfer of some of those US aid paid for Starlinks that were meant to go to Ukraine. Some of them, as you pointed out all the time, went to Russia. And USAID was the agency investigating Elon Musk for that, which explains why he shut it down. And it explains what we're dealing with here. These people are, once they have cryptocurrency regulated, and once crypto is the law of the land and the currency of the land, they will become so brutal, because that's the one thing they really want that they don't have yet, is this cryptocurrency normalization. Once they have that, all gloves are off. I don't think they're going to care about anyone's opinions about anything. They're just going to run this as a fiefdom of Putin and Xi's, and that's it. Americans don't realize yet how stark, a difficult and dark a position we're in right now, with this takeover of the administration, with this looming crypto normalization, and with these criminals at the helm of the government who are shutting down every independent investigation, every independent investigator, every